Welcome to the Resilient Retail Game Plan, a podcast for anyone wanting to start, grow or scale a profitable creative product business with me, Karin Dillie. The Resilient Retail Game Plan is a podcast dedicated to one thing, breaking down the concepts and tools that I've gathered from 20 years in the retail industry and showing you how you can use them in your business. This is the real nuts and bolts of running a successful product business, broken down in an easy, accessible way. This is not a podcast about learning how to make your business look good. It's the tools and techniques that will make you and your business feel good. Confidently plan, launch and manage your products, and feel in control of your sales numbers and cash flow to help you build a resilient retail business. Welcome. It is episode 78 of the Resilient Retail Game Plan. I'm your host, Karin Dillie, as well as the founder of the Resilient Retail Club, which is my membership for product businesses. You can find out more at resilientretailclub.com. And if you use the code 10podcast, that's 10podcast, you can get £10 off your first month. Today's episode, I'm really excited about this. There's a fascinating trend towards resale, also known as secondhand goods. And in the fashion industry in particular, resale is growing at 11 times the rate of all other types of retail, which is a huge growth potential for retailers. We are going to be talking today to two people who have created a tech solution, Griffin and Karin Dillie. They're from the tech platform Recurate. And what Recurate does is it allows retailers to resell their own products, so second life, third life, on their own website. So rather than a customer going to somewhere like Depop or eBay to sell their products, retailers and brands are able to actually make this happen through their own website, which is really fascinating opportunity. And I'm going to leave it there and jump in because Wilson and Karin are going to be able to explain this in way more detail than I am, but enjoy the episode. Karin, Wilson, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Do you want to kick us off by introducing yourselves?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, Karin, privileged to be here. Thank you for having us. My name is Wilson Griffin. I'm co-founder and COO of Recurate, an e-commerce integration that allows brands and retailers to offer peer-to-peer resale for their customers directly through their website, where those brands and retailers can take advantage of the popularity of people buying and selling amongst each other.
And hello, Karin. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Karin Dillie. I am the VP of Partnerships here at Recurate. Excited to be chatting with you. I actually, before this, worked at The Real, working with brands and retailers there as well. And before that, worked at Sotheby's. So have been in resale my whole career, which I now believe is the most millennial thing about me. So excited to be chatting about this.
Fantastic. So let's start off then with the definition of resale. For anyone who's listening, you may have heard the term. Should we just start off with a definition? How do you define it? What is it? And how has it grown over time?
So we think about resale as really anything that can continue on to a second life. So maybe like toothpaste, not really available for resale, things like perfume, all of that, but anything that can have a second life. You know, I feel like I've been in this resale space for a while. Growing up, we bought thrifted furniture, and went to thrift stores to find cool clothes when we were in high school, things like that. So really this idea of like trade or secondhand has been around for a very long time. I think what's interesting, what I've seen in my career progression is that going from Sotheby's to The Real to now Recurate is that it's become much more available because of technology. So essentially technology has opened this door to resale. So things that people maybe didn't think had a second life before, didn't know where to sell it or how much it could sell for, that's what's really grown. So for us, resale is really anything that is high enough quality that it can be used, worn, loved, sat on, slept on, and then have a second life with another person.
So obviously the platform's called Recurate as well. So do you draw a distinction then between sort of all secondhand, so maybe charity stores, thrift stores, as you say, and sort of a curated offer of resellable items?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, for us, to Karin's point, the resale world is very broad and encompasses a lot of different types of products. The way we work is by partnering with retailers or brands that already have an existing audience. They already have, if it's a brand, the products that they themselves manufacture and sell. If it's a retailer, the products that they merchandise, and they have their own distinct catalog. And we see a lot of value in giving those brands and retailers the tools to have their own resale channel. So if you are a devoted customer of Beyond Retro, you love their items, yes, you can go and shop in one of their stores. You wear that item for a while. When you're ready to part with it, to go back to Beyond Retro, where there is that built-in audience, there is that look and feel. And that's really where the curation comes in, by going back to the original sellers of those items, whether that's a retailer or a brand.
I see. So yeah, so then, and we'll get onto this later, but specifically what we're talking about here is not just the whole resale market, but it's about how it can actually almost become that additional sales channel for a retailer.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to be clear, we as Recurate at this point in time, we don't have a storefront, we don't have a marketplace, our website isn't shoppable. We really provide the tools for existing brands and retailers to bring this to their customers. So they can go out and say, we know that you bought this item 6 months ago. We hope you still love it. You're wearing it every day. If it turns out you're not, we know that there's demand for it from our existing customers. Why don't you come back, list that item for sale? We'll facilitate that for you. We'll help you put that in front of our audience again. And then you can be paid in potentially store credit or cash when you sell that item. So
basically, you're kind of building in that element of circularity, because what would you say that the whole sustainability aspect has been one of the big pushes behind the whole resale growth?
Yeah, I would say that this has really been a consumer-led change. So customers of brands and retailers are saying, hey, we will buy with you if you are more sustainable, and we want to see the ways that you're more sustainable. So a lot of brands are looking at their supply chain, their raw materials, all of those aspects. And we're also really helping them think, how do you think even broader than just the product itself? How do you think about the whole life cycle of an item? Historically, brands and retailers have sold the item and then it goes out into the ether forever to never be known again. And so now it's like, well, how do you extend the life cycle? How do you as a brand take ownership and say, we know we put a lot of product out there, and now we can be a part of extending the life of that product rather than it going into a landfill or going into the trash. So that's really what Recurate's focus is creating that circularity. So to Wilson's point, you buy a new item, you use it, you wear it, you love it, you want to sell it. The behavior we're changing is going to Poshmark or dropping it off at a charity and really being able to then sell that item, use your site credit then to buy something new. So it literally creates a circle of buy and then sell and then buy and then sell.
So we're slightly moving away then from, I guess, the kind of the big thing with a lot of the resale sites is that it's like Depop and, all the different other ones that there are. A lot of the time it's like, you can buy anything from any brand, whereas this is narrowing it down so that as the brand itself, you're keeping people on your site and you're saying, right, rather than my item going off to like a multi-brand site, it's keeping it within the brand ecosystem, as it were.
Yeah, exactly right. And, brands see this behavior. Just to go into a little bit of my background, prior to starting Recurate, I was at Gap Inc. for many years, the parent company of Gap, Banana Republic, Old Navy, Athleta.
Right.
And obviously, people within the company are well aware that products manufactured by the Gap Inc. brands are being sold on Depop, on Poshmark, on eBay, on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, etc. So the behavior exists. So yes, we are trying to bring more customers into this ecosystem and this world, but it's also evident every day that people are open to this behavior. They're doing it on their own. And a lot of the work that we do with our partnerships and our strategy conversations with brands is we come up with ideas to make it a better experience for an individual user. So rather than going to Depop to sell their item, we make it much easier to sell it on the brand's site.
Yeah.
And then more payout, more value to that seller by compensating them in store credit. And it works for the brand because they are potentially reacquiring that customer. It gives them broader price access. It gives them a new sort of offering that they can use to bring more people, especially younger customers, into the brand.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I was just thinking because, like I'm not a millennial. I'm slightly older than a millennial. And I remember, back in the sort of, 80s, early 90s when I was growing up, like the idea, it's quite funny when I think about it now, because like the idea of being caught in a charity shop was just like, so it would have been like so deeply mortifying. And I think that's what I find. I mean, what I think is great about resale really, it's, is as you said, it's that consumer led, and it's really clear, I suppose, to see what the benefit is for the consumer, because obviously it's like the twin benefit when you say like the sustainability aspect, but also, let's face it, like the price aspect as well.
Yeah, it's a gateway into, high quality brands. So a lot of consumers that can't necessarily afford the full price and want to test out a brand will buy secondhand to see what the items are like, see the quality, engage with it. And then they become a full price buyer of an item they maybe can't find secondhand or things like that. So you also are kind of engaging them and meeting them where they're at right now and building this relationship with them throughout a lifetime. And what's interesting, and we saw this when I was at the Real World as well, is that a lot of customers already buy by brand. They're already looking, if you look at some of these third-party marketplaces, they have entirely curated sites. Mara Hoffman is one of our amazing brands that we work with, and there's like Mara Hoffman branded secondhand sites out there. And so we really wanted to create that same experience and just engage them directly with the brand. We lead with a lot of the original brand imagery. So it really looks on brands when you're scrolling through. It's not like pictures in people's closets or on their beds or things like that. You can find the original description of the item, the original measurements, things like that. And then you also see the pictures of what it's like now. So then you understand the condition, all of that. And it's essentially vetted because the brand approves everything before it goes up on their site. So it's just a really trusted experience, which also means the seller can command a higher price, because when there's more trust, they can command a higher price on the secondary market. So it's a really interesting, like building out these ecosystems within the brand. There's kind of benefits to each of the players.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I kind of wanted to come back to, because Wilson, I think you mentioned a couple of benefits which are really interesting. And what I'd love to, for anyone who's listening to this podcast, who has a product business, who's thinking to themselves, who maybe starting to think to themselves about adding that element of circularity, I think it's really fascinating, because having sort of all the sort of reading and writing and research that I've done about the retail industry over the last few years, like there's sometimes with these terms that get kind of thrown around a lot, right? Like everyone always says, oh, we want to be more circular, you need to introduce circularity. But then kind of when you get down to the nuts and bolts of what that actually looks like for a brand, it has its challenges. So before we kind of delve into a little bit about kind of things that make things a little bit trickier about resale, and obviously how Recurate helps with that, I'd love to just kind of go back and really explore a little bit more what you were saying about the benefit for a brand, because I think it's really worthwhile emphasizing why even go on this journey, if that makes sense. And I think you, Wilson, both of you have kind of dropped those in, but I'd love to just pull those out a little bit. So I think it's really interesting what you were saying about that kind of almost extending the relationship with the customer. So is that sort of one of the major benefits you see? That's almost like you get two bites of the cherry, like you get the first sale, but then you also get that opportunity to interact when it comes to the resale.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just think about the customer journey a little bit. So first, there's the purchase of the new item, and let's say it's $100.
Yeah.
If that buyer is aware that in 6 months, they'll be able to sell that item for 60% of what they paid for it, it's essentially a 60% discount. So you're de-risking that initial purchase, first of all. The person buys it, they use it for 6 months. You don't offer resale yourself, that person's gone from your ecosystem. Yeah. If they resell it at all, they're going to do it in a local thrift or consignment store. You're not going to benefit at all. So by offering resale, you're not bringing that customer back to you. They're going to list that item. We'll say it's $60. They sell that item. You're then bringing in potentially a new customer to buy that item who's prioritizing buying used, or they're prioritizing the value that comes with buying a secondhand item. And then at the end of that transaction, we give our partners the option on whether they want to pay out the seller in cash or store credit. Most opt for store credit. So in this scenario, that seller who sold the item for $60 now has $60 in store credit in their account and they're going to come back to the brand. And what we've seen with our existing partners is they'll typically spend 2.5 to 4 times what they earned in Karin. So if they have that $60, they're going to come back and spend, somewhere between $150 and let's say $240. So just in that one sort of customer journey that we outline, there is so much value to be had as that brand or retailer that's facilitating this. And then on top of it all, you get the sustainability and the circularity storytelling that come with it, and some softer marketing benefits as well.
Yeah. I love that. It's always great when it's like a win-win solution, a win-win-win, really, because it's a win for both customers as well as for the brand. And Karin, you mentioned there about the kind of crossover then between where you get a resale customer who comes and purchases at more like an entry price point. You're saying that they actually often will then convert perhaps to a full price customers as well.
Yeah, we see about 50% of the secondhand buyers are new to brand. So they've never interacted with the brand before. Maybe if the brand sells wholesale, they maybe bought then, but the brand doesn't have them in their marketing funnel. They can't engage with them. They don't know who they are. And that was something we really saw when I was at the Real, that brands wanted to know who their customers were. They wanted to know when are they selling, where are they buying, how long do they have their product for. So it's really interesting to now be able to track that. And there's an interesting behavior that we see that I love, that customers can buy secondhand from the brand and then use it. And then they're selling third hand at that point. They're not selling those items. Because we do that like direct integration into their e-com, the brand can track all of that and be able to see that. So it's not just kind of like, oh, you sell it a second time and it's gone. There's oftentimes a third, fourth, fifth life, especially with really high quality products. So Wilson mentioned that de-risking. And I think a lot of consumers and their minds are like, okay, I got this secondhand item. I use it. I love it. It's such high quality. I now want to buy boots, for this next season. This is the brand. I'm a loyalist now. And we talk a lot, and you probably see this a lot across brands, is like, how do you really create a loyal customer? And this is another way to ingrain them in that cycle.
Yeah, that's such a great point, because I suppose, as you said, this is behavior that already happens. People go onto a third-party resale site and they search for the brands that they're interested in. They'd like to, either they already know they like or they'd like to try. But this is saying that you can go directly to that brand, and then you don't even have to filter through. You can just go through and have a look and select something, and then that brand has that data, which is phenomenal.
It's interesting too, given the past couple of years and the supply chain issues as well, that brands that have brand loyalists and these really phenomenal, amazing products, but maybe can't get as many made as they would want, secondhand is a phenomenal way to kind of supplement that too. So your customers don't go to your site and bounce because it's sold out. They actually have an option to buy that. You can re-engage those customers that bought it a year ago and say like, hey, you bought this a year ago. We hope you're using it. We hope you're loving it. But if you're not, there's demand on the secondary market for this. We would love for you to sell. So it's also kind of a way for brands to think much more holistically about their supply chain, that supply chain is not just new products coming in on their site, but they can tap into their customer base too.
Yeah, well, I mean, absolutely. And stock shortages, and we saw that at Christmas, so much indication of things just being out of stock and people, like you say, having to look around for the items they wanted, but if it's all there on the resale site. So let's talk a little bit about some of the challenges, because obviously sounds like a phenomenal opportunity, but what do you think historically some of the issues have been around getting a resale up and running for a business?
Yeah, I think for a lot of brands, retailers, legacy retailers, they've been operating in a certain way for a long time. They've been making products or sourcing products and selling those products one time. And that's what their business is built around. That's what how their organization is structured. So there is just, like all innovations, there's a bit of a learning curve to get comfortable with sort of, what this is going to look like. And that's what we set out to do when we built Recurate, is to create the tool set, from the technology to the strategy expertise to the customer service to the operations, to allow brands to do this in a really low barrier manner. Very, very low upfront costs, in some cases, virtually no upfront cost. So a brand can take a step into this world, without a massive commitment, and they can leverage our expertise and our technology to start down this process.
And so do you think part of the issue then with brands is just, like you say, changing the mindset, start really thinking about seeing it as an opportunity as opposed to perhaps like a logistical issue that they've got to overcome?
I actually have seen this phenomenal change in brands when we talk to them. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. They know that this is the future. The way we see it and the way we're thinking about resale is that in 5 years, probably less, resale will be as omni-channel as retail is right now. You'll be able to do it online, in store, through multi-brand, through the brand directly. It will just be a portion. It'll be another channel for them. And it will be omni-channel across the different ways that you can buy retail right now. So what the conversations we have, and to Wilson's point, are less about like, hey, should we do this? Or what is the ROI? It's more like, how do we do this? And how do we do this to best serve our customer? And that's where we bring all this expertise from our 40 brand partners saying like, okay, your customers at this price point, this is how they tend to behave. This is how we think you should build a strategy. This is the technology you'll need. We essentially build that technology for them and really become their marketplace, but it really feels all branded. So their customers don't even know Recurate's powering that marketplace.
So it's completely seamless, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And from a purely practical standpoint, so are these brands, or does it depend on the type of product, but are the sellers sending directly to the purchaser, or does it have to go back via the brand, or what's the kind of, is it direct from seller to buyer?
Yeah, so what we see is we're a service provider to our brands, and we want to help realize for them what their vision of resale is. For the majority of our brands, there is a peer-to-peer component. So the seller lists the item, it's purchased through the brand site, and that item is shipped directly from the seller to the buyer. There's a lot of advantages to that. There's no inventory risk to the brand, minimal shipping cost, no operational cost. But for certain items, maybe that doesn't make sense. Maybe there's a safety component with it, for example. And in those cases, we also have, as a part of our platform, the opportunity to integrate with, potentially their warehouse or their stores if the brand does want to get physical hands on that product, they can do so. So for us, we try to be pretty agnostic and not push our brands and really give them the tools they need to run the program that they would like.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can see both ways. But as you said, then I guess the thing is that, the peer-to-peer, as you said, it's a well-established, well-trodden route now that people know about. People sell things online all the time. So it's not like it's a new behavior that you're having to really kind of explain to the consumer. The consumer is just completely comfortable with it. And I guess that's the kind of, that's amazing to think about the shift in the industry really over the last few years.
Yeah, I would say the consumer is more comfortable than brands are. Brands are like, well, wait a second, what, they have to ship it? And it's like, they are doing this with your product already,
Yeah.
And I think that's really interesting. We pull numbers for them. We pull the data on like how much this is happening. And they're like, oh, so this really is happening. And so it's a really fun conversation when it kind of clicks for them too. And we can show them how easily they can scale with peer-to-peer. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, no, it's so true because I mean, this is like I worked in corporate retail for a long time, and like in my head, sometimes when I hear about resale and what you're talking about, they're going peer to peer. It's almost like unbelievable that you're not getting involved because that is such a big part for a retailer about all of the logistics and managing it. But it's hugely beneficial if it goes peer to peer, and as you say, it's like so. Everyone does it now, so they're just totally used to it. So you said in 5 years you think that resale is going to be another channel, just like it's a part of kind of an omni-channel strategy. So how? I know that at the moment, I think the stat I read was that resale was growing at 11 times the speed of the rest of types of retail. But where do you see it going? Just the sky's the limit?
Yeah, the pie is just getting bigger and bigger. I mean, 12 years ago when I started at Sotheby's, we were selling multi-million-dollar paintings. And that was kind of like the mainstream resale, if you think about it. And now what we see is that technology has really enabled, you to resell $20 pair of jeans, from Target. Like all of that can be resold. What we see and what we find really interesting is how does technology keep evolving that? How do we scale it better? How do we understand customer behavior better? Also, there's an aspect of blockchain that is super fascinating. And so, I say that the provenance that used to be written on the back of Sotheby's paintings was the original blockchain. You just write who owned it and then write the next person. And now we have technology to be able to do that. So how do you use blockchain to track who the owner of a shirt is or a piece of jewelry? How do you track that essentially in a digital ledger to make sure you're following all the first life, the second life, the third life? And then when that item needs to be recycled or hits the end of its life, how do you best recycle it? All of that can be stored in that blockchain as well. So it's really interesting to think about how technology can evolve resale to make it more accessible, to make it easier, and to just extend that life as much as possible.
And so do you envisage then that it will something that will be accessible not just to larger product businesses, but even for small businesses as well, that they'll be able to put that functionality into their business as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And for us, there's a ton of value in small and growing brands and getting involved in resale. When you think about the challenges of especially capital in young brands where they need to raise significant amounts of money to make purchase orders and make these inventory bets, and they're probably actually going to under order because the last thing they want to do is be sitting on all this inventory. And by offering something like resale, and especially what Karin's describing with connected products, you're a growing brand and you make an item and you sell out in a few days, you can actually keep selling that item. And if there's enough demand for it, prices will actually go up.
Wow.
It's just a really interesting new way for especially a growing brand to think about inventory and how they engage with their customers.
It's such a fascinating conversation. I mean, I find this whole area of retail is so interesting. And yeah, so 5 years' time, will everyone be doing resale, do you think?
Yes. If we have anything to do with it, they will be.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, it sounds like, when you say it like that, it does sound like a no-brainer. It's just because, as you said, it's what customers want. It's maximizing your interactions with the customer, which is so helpful. Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining me, and I'm sure we'll be hearing lots from you in the future. But do you want to just finish off by telling us a little bit more about where people can find out more about you if they're interested in your platform?
Yeah, absolutely. We encourage people to visit our website, recurate.com. And we have a super easy form if you want to get in touch, and we would love to hear from you. We are very excited to talk to really any and all brands about the potential, and retailers for that matter, about the potential that the resale holds for them.
So the big question, does this make you think about resale for your own business? Would you consider having that element on your own website where people could come and sell on products that they've bought from you? What were your thoughts about today's episode? Do come over to Instagram, say hi at Resilient Retail Club, and let me know what you thought. I also love to see where you are, where you're listening to the podcast. Some great shots of some frosty walks recently. So do let me know where you are, where you're listening. And of course, if you have a second to rate and review the podcast in iTunes, that would be so appreciated, because it means the world to me and really helps me get the word out about the podcast to other people. And of course, do hit subscribe or follow if you're in Spotify, and you'll be the first to know about each new episode. If you've enjoyed this week's episode, then I invite you to check out resilientretailclub.com. The Resilient Retail Club is the membership for anyone wanting to start, grow, or scale a profitable product business. No more trawling Google trying to find the answers to your questions or wading through general business advice that speaks mainly to service-based businesses. Whether you're still at the idea stage or you've been going for a while but want to get more focused and organised when it comes to your business, the Resilient Retail Club is the place for you. With a library of courses tailored to creative product businesses, several live sessions a month, and a supportive and active community, the Resilient Retail Club is the perfect membership to help you hit your goals faster. Check it out at resilientretailclub.com.